Echoes in the Dust. Part 1. The Black Sky. The sky over Pripyat was the color of soot, thick with a silence that felt manufactured, forced upon the land like a warning. The wind did not blow. Trees stood like sentinels, frozen in unnatural stillness. The only movement came from the soft crunch of boots pressing into the gray earth. Captain Alexei Varnin adjusted the filter on his gas mask as he stepped out of the back of the armored truck. The metallic click of the Geiger counter on his chest spiked slightly, then steadied. "Readings," he barked. Lieutenant Zoya Petrenko, his second-in-command, checked the unit on her wrist. "Rising, but within safe threshold for short exposure. Zone is stable, no new surges." Alexei's eyes scanned the wasteland ahead. They had stopped just outside the 30-kilometer exclusion zone, but the reactor's ghost had reached far beyond that invisible line. The wind carried more than radiation. It carried whispers. That's what the soldiers said, those who returned. If they returned, inside the truck, the rest of the team prepared in silence. Mikhail, the engineer, Lev, the medic, and Yuri, a communications officer who hadn't stopped shaking since they left Kiev. This wasn't an ordinary operation. This was a recovery mission, a very specific one. A scientist, Dr. Emil Kresnik, had gone missing 2 nights ago inside Reactor 4's dead zone. A physicist attached to the ministry, Kresnik was said to be working on containment diagnostics. But no one truly knew what that meant. He had entered the sarcophagus, alone, during a blackout window. He never came out. The KGB classified the event within hours. No civilian rescue attempts. No public acknowledgement. Just a discreet mobilization of a specialized recovery unit, Task Force Vega. Check your seals." "Final checks," Alexei ordered. Each team member gave a silent thumbs up as they stepped into the thick air, the truck door sealing behind them with a hiss. Their suits, thick and gray, blended with the ash around them. They moved as one, disciplined and focused. The landscape was a skeletal painting of Soviet ruin. Cracked concrete, shattered windows, rusted swing sets in abandoned parks. Alexei had seen war. Afghanistan, the border conflicts, but this felt worse. This was decay without cause, an invisible death. They reached the checkpoint leading into Pripyat proper, Checkpoint Vostok. The gate was unmanned, the small shack dark, the windows frosted from the inside with moisture and something else, maybe mold, or something alive. Zoya moved to the terminal, activating the manual override. The metal gate groaned open with reluctance. Once we enter, Com's blackout begins. Only encrypted short range to base every 30 minutes, Yuri muttered, wiping sweat from the inside of his visor. Alexei nodded. "Let's make this quick." 3 hours later, they stood at the edge of the sarcophagus. The reactor shell loomed before them like a metal tomb, constructed in haste after the 1986 explosion to contain what couldn't be undone. The structure pulsed faintly in the thermal sensors, but there was no power. No systems should be running. Yet something glowed. Mikhail was the first to see it. There, northwest quadrant, sub-basement ventilation port. Blue light. "Impossible," Lev muttered. "The power was disconnected 5 years ago." "Unless someone turned it back on," Zoya said. The Geiger counters clicked. "Faster now." They entered through a side breach. Inside, the air was thicker, heavier, not in a physical sense, but in the way a room can be heavy with memory. Everything here remembered what had happened. The silence screamed of it. They moved down the corridor. Wall markings showed faded Cyrillic warnings. Rooms passed by like cells in a prison. Alexei noted deep scratches along the steel plating. Not from tools. From hands. "Stop," Zoya said suddenly. A light sound, a whisper. They turned as one. But there was nothing. Only shadows. Could be the suit valves, Lev said, trying to mask his nerves. But Alexei knew better. The air was wrong here. They reached a lab, a reinforced room still half intact. Inside, they found it. Kresnik's ID badge, blood on the strap, a folder beside it with documents too damaged to read, except for one phrase underlined in red ink. Language of echo. Contagious patterns. Not sound, structure. What does that even mean? Yuri asked. No one answered. Mikhail accessed the console nearby. To their shock, the system flickered to life. Not fully, but enough to run diagnostics. Power was indeed active in one area, sublevel theta. Alexei made the call. We go down. They descended into the dark. Sublevel theta was not on any schematic they'd seen. The stairs led into blackness untouched for decades. Even their lights seemed to dim slightly as they moved deeper. The corridor turned from industrial concrete to something older, almost monastic. Carved walls, symbols etched into stone, though no one could explain why stone existed below a steel reactor. What the hell is this place? Zoya whispered. At the end of the hall was a door. Not a hatch or bulkhead, but a door, wooden, with intricate carvings that resembled letters, but no known alphabet. Mikhail reached out. Don't, Alexei snapped. No contact. Document only. Too late. The door opened on its own. Inside was a chamber, circular, lined with mirrors and standing coils. And in the center, a single chair facing a wall of symbols, glowing faintly in blue light. And on the chair, oh my God, Lev gasped, was Dr. Kresnik, alive, eyes open, mouth moving, but no sound. He looked at them and began to write something in the air with his finger, repeating it over and over. Not a cry for help, a pattern, a message. Alexei stepped forward, heart hammering. The counters clicked madly now. Time was short. What's he saying? Yuri whispered. Zoya spoke, voice hollow. He's not speaking. He's repeating a sequence, a phrase, over and over. Alexei felt his blood chill. What phrase? Zoya's voice dropped to a whisper. Do not repeat what you see. Part 2. The whisper field. Dr. Emil Kresnik's eyes didn't blink. His lips moved with inhuman precision, repeating the same sequence silently, over and over. The eerie blue light bathed his gaunt face, casting long shadows behind him in the mirror-lined chamber. Get him out of that chair, Alexei ordered, though his voice betrayed hesitation. Lev and Zoya approached carefully, stepping over strange markings scorched into the concrete floor. As Lev reached out, Kresnik suddenly stopped moving. His body tensed. His eyes darted directly into Lev's. Wait, Lev started. Too late. Kresnik screamed, but there was no sound. His mouth opened impossibly wide, his throat trembling as if trying to expel something that refused to take form. The Geiger counter spiked. Mikhail shouted, "Radiation surge." Alexei pulled back, issuing commands, but the team was already moving. Lev yanked Kresnik from the chair, Zoya swept the room with her rifle, and Mikhail shut down the active coils lining the chamber. And then the screaming stopped. Kresnik collapsed, unconscious, into Lev's arms. They retreated to the upper level in complete silence. Even their radios had begun to distort. Not with static, but with something more disturbing. Voices, faint and overlapping, whispering in a language no one understood. Yuri, pale and sweating, removed his headset entirely. Back in the abandoned lab, they set Kresnik down and secured the room. Lev began basic triage. No signs of burns, but neurological response is abnormal, he muttered. He's humming, in his throat, like a broken radio. He was repeating that phrase, Zoya said, over and over. Do not repeat what you see. What does that mean? Alexei didn't answer immediately. His eyes were locked on a diagram left inside the folder they had found earlier. It looked like an architectural schematic, overlaying the reactor four-chamber with a symbolic mandala, traced in looping spirals and mathematical notations. "This isn't engineering," he said slowly. "It's not science. It's something else." "Like what?" Mikhail asked. "Religious?" "No. Ritualistic." Hours passed. Kresnik eventually regained consciousness. His eyes blinked in confusion before locking onto Alexei. "You shouldn't be here," he said hoarsely. "You went into Theta without clearance." "We were sent to recover you," Alexei replied. "You've compromised the zone." Kresnik shook his head. "You don't understand. It's not about radiation. It never was." Zoya leaned in. "Then what is it?" Kresnik took a breath. "The reactor wasn't just a reactor. Not in its final months. We were ordered to conduct signal research, sound-based encoding inside high-energy environments." "Like sonar?" Mikhail asked. Kresnik shook his head again, more violently this time. "No, not sonar. Language. We were studying phonemic structures that emerged in resonance chambers. Something ancient, something that repeats itself across different civilizations. In caves, temples, even deep-sea fault lines. Patterns and frequency. The reactor's residual geometry made it ideal for test cases." Zoya frowned. "You're saying you were listening?" "No, we were transmitting." And something answered. The room fell silent. Kresnik sat up straighter. "Sublevel Theta isn't on the official maps because it predates the plant. There's a crypt structure buried beneath the foundation, likely built long before the Soviets, maybe even before recorded history. When the core exploded, the barrier that kept it dormant fractured. Now it speaks." Alexei looked at him carefully. "What do you mean it speaks?" Kresnik met his gaze. "A mimetic construct, a pattern that spreads, not through touch or sight, but through thought, through sound, like a virus of the mind. We called it the whisper field." Yuri, trembling again, muttered, "That's what I've been hearing on the radio. The whispers." "You've already been infected," Kresnik said. "All you have." Suddenly, the lights flickered. A low hum filled the air. "Backup power?" Mikhail asked. "No," Zoya replied. "That's external." The walls began to vibrate subtly. Kresnik stood, wobbling. "It's trying to leave. It's learned us. Our language, our thoughts. If it gets out." A shriek burst through the facility's intercom. Electronic, high-pitched, modulated like feedback from a corrupted speaker. Yuri screamed, ripping his helmet off and clutching his ears. "It's inside. It's inside my head." He turned, gun shaking in his hands. "I have to stop it. Have to stop the signal." "Yuri, stand down," Alexei shouted. But Yuri fired. A wild shot. The bullet ricocheted off the console, sending sparks flying. The team tackled him, tearing the gun away. He convulsed once and went limp, dead. Silence fell once more, save for the low hum growing louder by the second. Kresnik staggered to the console and began typing, faster than anyone could follow. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. Zoya joined him. "What are you doing?" "Isolating the frequency. If we can isolate it, we can contain it. Maybe trap it back in Theta," he said. "But what is it? What are we trapping?" Kresnik's fingers paused. A thought, a mind without a body, a concept that remembers being alive. And now it wants to be again. Suddenly, the lights surged, and from every radio, every intercom, even the static in their headsets, came a single word. In Russian, in Ukrainian, in English. "Listen," Zoya turned to Alexei. "If we don't destroy this place, it escapes," he finished grimly. A choice stood before them. Return to the surface and report, risking the spread of the pattern, or go back into Theta and bury it forever. Alexei looked around. His team waited, and then he said, "We go back." Part 3, The Core That Breathes. They descended in silence, every footstep echoing through the metallic stairwell that led back to sublevel Theta. There was no discussion, no debate. After Yuri's death and the emergence of the word through the airwaves, the team had come to a grim consensus. Whatever the Whisper field was, it couldn't be allowed to leave Chernobyl. And to do that, it had to be sealed where it began. Alexei led, rifle gripped tightly in his hands. Zoya followed, her expression blank, distant. Mikhail kept close to Kresnik, whose breath grew shallower with each step, like the act of approaching Theta physically drained him. When they reached the final door, they paused. The steel was trembling, not visibly, but subtly, as if it were alive, breathing. Kresnik placed his hand against it. It knows we're coming. Inside, Theta had changed. The mirror-lined chamber was gone. Or rather, it had transformed. The reflective panels now showed not their own faces, but other scenes. A city on fire, a sky thick with ash, forests dead, and humming with unseen frequencies. Lev whispered, "What the hell are we looking at?" Kresnik didn't answer. His eyes were wide. One of the mirrors showed Yuri, standing in the hallway they had just come from, bleeding from the eyes, whispering something to the air. Another showed Zoya, alone, screaming in a room filled with speakers. "These are futures," Kresnik said. "Possibilities, or threats," Alexei muttered. "It's trying to break us." Mikhail stepped forward and waved his hand across a panel. His reflection flickered and dissolved, replaced by static. Then by a nuclear core pulsing like a living heart, cables wrapped like veins around glowing rods. "It's under the reactor," he said quietly. "Buried in the foundation." Zoya pointed. "There. That tunnel wasn't open before." They moved in, lights flickering, Geiger counters crackling like whispers and static. As they moved deeper, the architecture shifted. Concrete gave way to stone, ancient, engraved with spiral symbols and geometric runes that hurt the eyes if stared at too long. The air grew thick, electric, as if sound had a texture. They could feel it on their skin, the pressure of memory. Kresnik stumbled. Zoya caught him. "I shouldn't be here," he muttered. "They'll see me again." "What do you mean they?" Kresnik's eyes turned hollow. "They built this place before languages were written, before thought was free." They rounded a corner and froze. At the center of the chamber stood a stone monolith, surrounded by coils of Soviet equipment, now fused into its base. It pulsed slow, rhythmic, alive. Around it, cables ran into the ceiling, connecting to rusted panels and cracked displays. And carved into the monolith. We spoke first. The lights blew out. Total darkness. Then, a voice, low and ancient, vibrating through bone, not ears. "You brought fire to the silence. You named the unnameable. Now, the debt is due." Alexei fired blindly into the dark. His flashlight flicked back on, and the monolith was gone. In its place, a doorway. "A black void," Zoya whispered. "We shouldn't go in." Kresnik stepped forward. "We already did. Decades ago. We've just been remembering it ever since." Without another word, he stepped through. Inside, there was nothing. Not darkness. Not light. Only sound. A low, constant vibration, like a womb filled with thunder. The rest followed. For what felt like hours or seconds, they walked blind through the void. Whispers wrapped around them like vines. Alexei heard his mother's voice. Zoya heard her own. Mikhail heard Yuri, apologizing over and over. They emerged into a circle, a cyclopean hall made entirely of carved stone, suspended over an abyss. Floating above it, a lattice of words, glowing, changing, ungraspable. Languages they didn't know. Shapes that became syllables, then screams. Kresnik fell to his knees. "This is the lexicon," he gasped. "The core of it. The pure thought. A pattern that echoes in every mind, waiting for permission to take root." Alexei looked up at it. "How do we stop it?" Kresnik trembled. "We don't. We overwrite it." From his pack, he pulled out an analog recorder. Military grade, shielded, pre-EMP. "I brought something," he said. He played a recording, a symphony composed by Soviet dissidents during the Stalinist purges. A peace band, buried, and erased from all archives. A memory they try to kill. "We use it to fight back." The lexicon vibrated. Pain shot through their skulls. Zoya screamed. Blood trickled from Mikhail's ears. The floating glyphs twisted, recoiling like a wounded animal. "Keep it playing," Alexei shouted. The abyss beneath them screamed. The entire hall trembled. Stone cracked. The pattern folded, like language breaking down into primal howls. The lexicon shattered, its light exploding into static. The entire structure began to collapse. "Run!" Alexei shouted. They fled, through the void, through the passage, the ground shaking behind them. Cables tore from walls. Fire burst from the seams of forgotten machines. They reached the stairwell just as the chamber imploded, sealing itself behind a wall of stone and steel. Silence. Kresnik collapsed again. It was over. Or mostly. Above ground, the sky over Chernobyl was turning orange with dawn. The team stood in silence, breathing in air still thick with history. Mikhail broke the quiet. "Did we kill it?" Kresnik shook his head. "No, but we reminded it we are not passive. We are not prey." Zoya looked at the horizon. "And if it comes back?" Alexei loaded his rifle. "Then we'll remind it again." Part 4. The quiet above. Dawn peeled away the darkness over the ruins of Pripyat like old paint from concrete. The horizon glowed, faintly golden, casting long shadows across broken rooftops and skeletal trees. For the first time in hours, the air felt still, almost clean. They emerged from the reactor block covered in soot, ash, and silence. Zoya leaned against the rusted side of a fire truck, eyes scanning the horizon. "It's quiet." Kresnik nodded, slow and tired. "Too quiet." Mikhail dropped his gear. "We sealed it. Whatever it was, it's buried. That's the end of it." But even as he spoke, the static returned, soft like wind through pine needles. Not audible. Felt. Kresnik looked to the tower above Reactor 4. "We didn't kill the signal. We buried the mouth, but the echo remains." In the hours that followed, they set up a temporary comms base at a nearby safe house, a Soviet bunker untouched since the first evacuation. Zoya reviewed the tapes. What was supposed to be blank analog now played snippets of dreams, voices whispering in reversed Russian, children humming melodies no one remembered learning, patterns repeating every 137 seconds. "We scrambled the source," she said, "but it's still transmitting." Mikhail looked over the schematics of the reactor. What if it's not just one signal? What if the monolith was only one receiver? Kresnik rubbed his temple. The whisper field isn't a single event. It's a resonance. It adapts. Alexei sat apart, rifle on his lap, watching the sky darken again. Then we didn't end it. We only woke it up. That night, Zoya couldn't sleep. She returned alone to the outskirts of the zone, to a high hill overlooking Reactor 4. The sarcophagus still stood intact, but something had changed. The red warning lights blinked out of rhythm. She turned on her handheld radio, just static. Then, buried within the noise, a single phrase repeated in her own voice. "We remember you." Back at the bunker, Kresnik pieced together files, records from before the accident. He found Project Echo 7, a classified initiative that used Chernobyl not just for power, but for signal experimentation. The core had never simply melted. It had amplified something ancient, an idea, a consciousness dormant beneath the Ukrainian soil. The monoliths weren't placed there, he muttered. They grew there. Zoya returned, pale. It's talking again. What did it say? She hesitated. It knows my name. 3 days later, the team gathered at the train tracks leading out of the zone. Evac teams were en route, ready to debrief them under high-level security. Files would be buried, records lost. It would become just another unspeakable chapter in Cold War history. But none of them felt the weight of victory. As the train screeched to a halt before them, a final rumble shook the ground. They turned. A low tone, a harmonic, just at the edge of perception, rolled through the land. Every animal within earshot fled. The birds took flight in silence. Zoya stepped back. It's still awake. Alexei whispered, we're standing on its lungs. Kresnik turned to them all. Then we make a pact. They gathered in a circle. No matter where it surfaces, Minsk, Siberia, Berlin, Washington, we go. We burn it down again. They nodded. The train doors opened, and with the final hiss of air brakes and steel, they stepped aboard, not toward safety, but toward a future filled with echoes. In the silence of a dying reactor, beneath the dust of forgotten cities, something breathes, and some echoes never fade.